In mid-February, I walked into temple for the first time in about a week. I opened the door to my office, saw an envelope sitting on my desk, and froze. 3 weeks earlier, my wife Jenna and I were married a couple of days after a beautiful celebratory ofruf right here in this sanctuary. And then just 2 weeks later, my grandmother died suddenly. Not a week after that, I found myself stuck in my doorway, staring at this envelope. I wondered, what was in it? Was it congratulations? Was it condolence? And which did I want it to be? The Talmud, in fact, discusses a scenario in which a funeral processional and a wedding processional both arrive at an intersection at the exact same time. They ask which group is to proceed first. But they never pose the question, what if one is a part of both processionals? But that's precisely where I found myself this February. I was at that crossroads, somehow in both situations simultaneously, the wedding and the funeral. Judaism values both joy and sorrow highly. Jews are commanded to rejoice and be happy together. On Shabbat, we celebrate with oneg, which literally means joy. On Purim, we are commanded not only to be happy, but to continually increase our joy throughout the month leading up to Purim. And right after Yom Kippur, we will prepare to celebrate Sukkot, a week called Zman Simchatenu, the time of our gladness. And two, Judaism has designated time for mourning and sadness. Tisha B'Av in modern days is a catch-all for negative things that have befallen the Jewish people, beginning with the destruction of the temple. Yom HaShoah is the day in which we specifically mourn the atrocities of the Holocaust. And more personally for many of us, the week of Shiva is set aside for mourning the death of a loved one. While these values are clearly highly regarded in our Jewish tradition, they have some psychological backing as well. In 2015, Disney Pixar released Inside Out, a movie that chronicles the inner workings of the mind of a young girl named Riley, who is dealing with her family's cross-country move. The main characters in the film are 5 personified emotions who control Riley's thoughts and actions. When Pete Docter first wrote this movie, he couldn't decide which emotions he wanted to focus on as main characters. Originally, they were joy, disgust, anger, and fear. 3 years into the development of the film, something still wasn't clicking, and Docter thought about giving up, until he had an epiphany. He realized that the real reasons for all emotions is to connect us, and sadness is the ultimate connector. Sadness triggers compassion and brings people together. And so that movie, with sadness as a central character, won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature. Judaism has a number of teachings about how we might embrace joy and sadness together. One of the most well-known is very simple. Gam ze ya'avor. This too shall pass. This phrase can help us temper ourselves, to remember that bad times will soon cease, and an equally important reminder in good times that they too are not everlasting. A reminder to stay balanced. But tonight, I actually think that this phrase does not fully encompass the importance of our task. Merely remembering that something will pass does not allow us to fully embrace it. Staying on that surface level might prevent us from diving too deep into despair, or to become like Icarus, too proud and lofty in our successes. But neither of these options allow us to grow from the experiences. In fact, this concept can be limiting. Another example from our tradition is the simple phrase, elu ve'elu, this and also this. The full quote from the Talmud tells a story of Hillel and Shammai, 2 of our Talmudic greats. They are in the midst of a 3-year disagreement, with both believing that their own opinion, of course, is right and should be followed. Ultimately, a booming voice from overhead rings out, Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim. This and also this are both the words of the living God. This phrase has become frequently quoted among Talmud scholars in arguments. Words can be in opposition and still both be the words of God, imbued with infinite worth and value. This concept in practice essentially tells us that two things can both be true. Joy and sadness can exist in harmony rather than dissonance. For me, that happened this winter. When I eventually stepped out of my office doorway, walked to my desk, and opened this envelope, of course, it contained both condolence and congratulations. And they weren't separate. The congregant who wrote the note hoped that my sadness was tempered by the fact that Jenna and I got to celebrate with my grandmother, and also that my family had those joyful moments of the wedding that still felt palpable while dealing with the grief and the loss. The letter helped me to understand more deeply the full spectrum of life. Rather than tempering my emotions like the Gamze Ya'avor model, or merely holding both truths side by side like Elu Ve'elu teaches, I was able to fully feel my sadness and my joy simultaneously. And the duality allowed each emotion to enhance the other. In embracing this idea allows each of us the opportunity to experience the totality of our lives, good, bad, and everything in between. And in doing so, change us, strengthen us, and help us live richer lives. Susan Cain's book, Bittersweet: How Sorrow and Longing Make Us Whole, illustrates this point brilliantly. She discusses the notion that older people are happier, and a study done at Stanford found a positivity effect as we age. Younger adults tend to have a negativity bias, while older folks in this study were more likely to focus on the positive. Cain writes, Laura Cartensen, a professor at Stanford, had a hunch about what was really going on. She thought that the real answer was the state of poignancy, which the elderly visit much more than the young. Poignancy, she told me, is the richest feeling humans experience, one that gives meaning to life, and it happens when you feel happy and sad at the same time. It's the state you enter when you cry tears of joy, when we tear up at that beloved child splashing in a rain puddle. End quote. The richest feeling humans experience is when we feel happy and sad at the same time. When I first read this sentence, I couldn't stop repeating it in my head over and over and over again. And finally, I had words to express what I was feeling at the end of January and beginning of February. This poignant moment, experiencing the full spectrum of my emotions rather than merely trying to focus on one or the other at a time, made me a more caring, more whole human being. If we only focus on being happy without acknowledging that the more bitter parts of our lives are equally important and impactful, we will end up living relatively empty lives. We forfeit the opportunity to overcome obstacles rather than ignore them, to be troubled by things and work to correct them, and experience the poignant sorrow of grief and loss. These are all crucial to our development as humans and as citizens of this world. They allow life to take on shape and depth and significance and meaning. Like so many things in Judaism, there are a multitude of explanations for why we break a glass at the end of a wedding ceremony. When I have the honor to stand under the chuppah with a couple, I offer them this one. The wedding concludes with a shattering of glass to remind us that even amidst moments of great joy, so much of our world remains broken. And yet, the reason we are here tonight to witness this incredible love and partnership is a reminder that even amidst the brokenness, your marriage, your bond, can act as a force of repair for our world. We all take comfort tonight in knowing that your lives together will be a source of wholeness for our world. It would be relatively easy to skip that step. Just shout Mazel Tov and recess into a wonderful celebration with food and drink and dancing. But I believe it actually enhances the ceremony. it enhances that moment. The acknowledgement that even in the most joyful moments of our lives, we know that there is always brokenness happening somewhere simultaneously. As our teacher Leonard Cohen reminds us, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Growing up, my earliest memory of Rosh Hashanah was at the end of the children's service, that I was going to be handed a little plate of apples and a little cup of honey. It's my favorite part. It felt like such a treat, dipping those apple slices in the small cups of honey to symbolize a sweet new year. And many of us greet one another that way as well. We say, Shana Tova Umituka. May it be a good and sweet year. A lovely phrase, but one that actually ignores the reality of our lives. We may hope for a year that is only sweet, but we know that that's not likely to happen. So tonight, let us embrace and maybe even welcome the idea that this new year will be filled with both joy and sorrow. A year of love and tears, one of triumph and pain. And may we allow ourselves to embrace the potential each one of us has to grow from those challenges, to deepen our own nuances and views of the world, and in doing so, become more thoughtful, empathetic, and resilient human beings. So tonight, I will offer a different greeting. Shana Tova, Mara Umituka. May it be a new year that includes some bitterness and some sweetness too. May it be one that allows us to experience a life more whole and, God willing, more holy as well. A truly good year. Amen.
Maker of all we feel, maker of songs that heal, maker of hope in this heart that I know that this world cannot steal. Maker of those who rise, who get to work despite all that they're feeling inside, who remind us of blessings still to